What's going on, guys? This is Kaishro. Welcome back. So we are back with another video. On this video, we're going to cover the top 5 beginner decks in early 2024. Our theme for this video is the Embers of the New Flame. So this video is perfect for beginners, newbies, and returnees to ignite their passion to dive into the competitive Yu-Gi-Oh scene. So without further ado, let's start. So before we venture on our top 5 list, we are going to assimilate what is the meaning of a beginner deck in my own assumption. So beginner decks are decks that doesn't have too much learning curve. So these decks are quite easy to understand, doesn't take too much brain power to understand the mechanics of the deck, and decks that are not too complex for a beginner or a returnee player in the scene. So yeah, decks that are not too costly. So then again, beginner players and newbie players are not equipped with too much money or a budget to dive into the game with $1,000 on their wallet. That's not going to happen unless you're a son of a millionaire or billionaire. But yeah, we're going to just be realistic, and we're going to assume that players are playing on a very rigid and limited budget. That's why I optimize the decks that are included here to be not too costly, and also decks that are not easily regressive, so they are bound to outwit or outlast the changes of the metagame. So for a beginner player, they can be quite unfamiliar with the changes of the metagame, but I could tell you that the metagame is very quick to change and very drastic into changes and developments, because we are going to have new products, and the ban lists are going to shape a lot of things for our format. So yeah, and at the same time, these decks have shown potential to be a top deck, or a deck that can top tournaments despite with simplistic gameplay and budget affordability. So even though your deck is easy to use, quite simple to use, and also budget as well, you can top tournaments, and it is guaranteed for these decks to have a successful run on certain tournaments. And yeah, these decks has attributes that can improve the skill set of newbies returnees and can cover their lack of experience. So these decks are easy to use, and also it can also improve the skills and the strategies, the tactics, and also the experience for our beginners and returnee players for this game. So without further ado, let's dive into our top 5 list. We're going to have the top 5 Fluandries. So the good old bird deck is still striking in our 2024, no? So they have been around since 2021, and they have been a perennial meta deck in the OCG format since the Burst of Destiny. So they are still here to compete even as a rogue deck for our beginner players. So looking on our Fluandry sample deck list, this deck list is tailored for beginners and returnee players. So yeah, I think I have done a good job on making a deck list for players that are going to be new and inexperienced for this deck. So yeah, moving on, we have the strengths of this deck. The basics and fundamentals of the game is omnipresent. So we already knew what is the basics of Yu-Gi-Oh! The normal summon, the tribute summon, those are the OG, the nostalgic, the feel-good moments of the Yugi Kaiba era, where nothing is too overcomplicated, nothing is over the top on the mechanics of the game. So you're just going to use normal summon, tribute summon, and use the basic and most fundamental things of the game. That's why Fluandris is one of the best decks to be utilized for beginners and newbies and returnees. And also nullifies the biggest threat, Maxi. So if you are new in our OCG metagame, Maxi is the most predominant card that is played on everyone's main deck, and I guarantee you that you're going to struggle playing around Maxi if you're a beginner and a returnee, because Maxi definitely brings so much card advantages for your opponent. Once you got Maxied and you don't have response or any place to nullify the Maxi, I think you're going to struggle very hard, and you're going to give up so much resources to your opponent. That's why it is important to play around Maxi effectively, even as a beginner, because you're going to be more resilient, and your opponent cannot punish you too much for the Maxi. So yeah, it nullifies the biggest threat on the OCG format. and also acts as a modern anti-meta. So anti-meta deck have been a thing over the past. Anti-meta decks have been present for almost any kind of meta game. There will always be an anti-meta deck, but now we have a new form of anti-meta in the form of Luandries, a very functional deck, no, in terms of very telegraphic plays, very easy to use, very resilient as well in terms of playing around the meta game, and also can hurt the best decks available in the format. We have Shifter on this deck. You can also play Floodgates like Macrocosmos and Dimension Fissure on this setup. So you have a lot of tools to nullify and answer the best decks on the format. That's why I think Fluandries does have a very good job on dealing against the best decks. But the flip side is the weaknesses of this deck is it is very weak when going second, weak going second capability. So sometimes your Robina, your Iglen cannot do something on going second. Those times can be very tough for a beginner to navigate going second using this deck, and you are limited with little resources to play around going second. You only have the Maxi, you only have the Advent. That's why I incorporated triple Tactics Trust on this deck and a targets for it like the Talent and Lightning Storm and Evenly Match, and also the Feather Storm on the main deck to have better avenues for beginners to navigate their board wiping capability on this deck, and also have answers when going first to just instantly win the game with the Feather Storm. So yeah, and also consistency issues are a major thing for Fluandries. You can ask every Fluandries player on Earth how it feels like to brick on this deck, and it is not a joke. I have played Fluandries as well, and I have suffered most of my losses from breaking, and that is the most unjust and really terrible feeling for a beginner player when you are left with no plays and you don't have any starters. You are left with your garnets and bricks on your hand, and you don't do too much, to be honest. And that's why it is a major concern, and that's why I only landed Fluandries on the number 5 on our list due to that major reason alone. So yeah, on top 5 we have Fluandries. So moving on, we have the top 4, we have the good old Eldritch, the Golden Lord are still thriving in 2024. I think this deck is designed to outlast the format, and the 2021 format was very good for the Eldritch. They became a very top meta contender deck in the OCG, but now it's different. It is only a rogue deck, but it is still a very good deck to pilot and very easy as well for beginners and newbies. So yeah, moving on, we have the sample deck list of the Eldritch. So yeah, looking on our deck list, it is run with a lot of purple cards or trap cards that can be very easy for beginners and returnees to play because they are just going to set cards and be available for those floodgates and those powerful high impact trap cards to impact the game on very minuscule ways of dealing with the opponent. So the strengths of this deck is very evident. Formidable going first, so you can already see how many floodgates that we are running on our list. We are running Summon Limit, Mistake, and a bunch of Skill Drain. There can be only one Rivalry goes in match. Those cards are very powerful when going first paired with Border. So you do have a lot of tons of floodgate to floodgate the opponent, meaning to say that they are left with no response or activities to do when they are getting floodgated with those cards, and that is a very good win condition to navigate on this Eldritch because you're going to win in a very simplistic manner. You're just going to stop the opponent from playing the game. And also, trap cards can surprise the metagame. So, most opponents doesn't run back row removals on the main deck. Their Cosmic Cyclones, their Feather Duster, their answers to your back rows are on their side deck most of the time, 99% of the time, to be honest. So, yeah, they don't have intangibles to deal with the trap cards. So, you're going to have a free pass on game 1 to punish them, and yeah, command the game with a very commanding presence using those trap cards, and also a zombie like grind game. So most beginners and returnees doesn't have too much knowledge to close out the game easily or fast enough to win the game. And yeah, I think the zombie-like grind game, this deck is like a zombie. It keeps on getting revived and grind out the game. So yeah, that is the resiliency of Eldritch to come back into the game and win in the latter stages using the revive ability of Golden Lord and the infinite recursion from your trap cards with the Sanguine and Conquistador and Wakero. So even if you mess up your early game, you are still going to have a decent chance to come back and mount a comeback using this deck. That's why I opted to include Eldritch due to how easy and yeah grindy this deck is can be. And also, it comes with a weakness. It struggles both sides. So when your opponent does include their back row wipes and board breakers on their main deck, their lightning storms, their feather duster, their heavy storm, their evenly match, all of those problematic cards that can be halted your strategy are going to be present on game 2 and 3. That's why you're going to struggle, and if you don't draw your anti-spell, your solemn judgment, your poppies, you're going to struggle very bad on those occasions if your opponent does draw the out against you. And also, subpar board breaking capacity. This deck also, like Fluandries, it struggles going second. You don't have too much resources on your end to break boards. You only have the Golden Lord. You only have the Eldland to search of things to break the board of your opponent. That's why I included Evilly Match here to just have an agency to board break the opponent. That's why I only thought of playing Eldritch as a raw deck that can go first and capitalize on it. That's why I really think that you're going to struggle very bad on this deck if you're not really adjustable on dealing with going second prowess using this kind of deck, considering that 90-80% of the deck is consistent of trap cards. So yeah, I included Lava Golem, Sphere Mode, and other board wiping cards like Lightning Storm for a newbie player to have easy navigation on going second just by drawing Lava Golems, and Sphere Mode can definitely out problematic boards, especially the format with Finsmith right now are equipped with a lot of interactions and interruptions and also Omni Negates on the board. So yeah, moving on, going to our top 3 on our list, we have Sword Soul. So another deck from 2021, no, like Fluandries, they are released from Burst of Destiny back in 2021, and the set came with a lot of positive feedback and review from players, and instantly became a meta threat on the format. And Sword Soul have been the best deck on 2021 due to their sheer consistency and overall firepower. So yeah, Sword Soul sample deck list here. We have Sword Soul Tenyi equipped with a bunch of Tenyi cards with the Adhara Ashuna and Vishuddha. So those cards can be your friends to improve the consistency of the Sword Soul and boost your intangibles and complex plays that you're going to explore on this deck. So yeah, the strengths of Sword Soul is quite evident here. Lets you learn the advanced mechanics of the game. So you're going to learn the advanced methods and things on the game. You're going to learn how to hand trap the opponent using the tons of hand traps on this deck. You have 15, something like 18 hand traps on this deck that can be paired on this deck, and those can be very handy that will give you knowledge on how to deal with the certain opponents. You're going to know when and where to hand trap, and also you're going to learn how to use your interruptions effectively with your Barone, with your Chixiao, with your Blackout. Those cards are your bread and butter for learning the game using the Sword Soul. You're going to learn so much things once you are able to capitalize and learn how to use Sword Soul effectively. That's why I ranked this higher than Fluandris, even though Fluandris have been more prominent on the metagame. I thought that Sword Soul can give you so much learning curve and potential to improve using this very underrated deck for quite some time already. This deck has been a very good deck last Worlds Championship. This deck went into the finals and sadly lost the finals, but yeah, you could already see how this deck can submerge as one of the pivotal decks that can definitely top major tournaments in this game. And also the deck's capacity can differ from the skill level of the pilot. So like I've said earlier, it differs a lot. Once you're a beginner sword soul, you are going to struggle on early phases. You are going to use your interruptions quite inefficient, and you're not going to have a very easy road to success on this deck. That's why you're going to have a sturdy and rocky road to learn a lot of things on the game, not only in your deck but in the game. You're going to learn a lot of things, and those things can be very vital on your improvement as a player. That's why this deck can also improve and elevate the ceiling and the overall performance of this deck once you reach in a certain point that you are knowledgeable enough, you are skillful enough to play the Sword Soul, and don't be afraid to take those challenges because it will definitely give you a better result than just relying on things like Fluandris or Eldritch that sits on a floodgate and does nothing to interact with the opponent. So this deck can definitely bring out the best out of you, and also the versatility is unmatched. So this Sword Soul can be played with combo pieces, with the Yang Zing, with the other stuff, Centurion, all of those complex and combo-ish stuff can be merged into the deck and make it more explosive. You can also play the deck more resilient. You're going to trim those Tenyi cards. You're going to replace those hand traps with floodgates. So you can definitely cater your deck depending on your playstyle, depending on your aim, depending on your goal, depending on the format. This deck is very versatile. So I think the unmatched versatility of this deck is too good to be frowned upon. So I think this deck is very good right now for a beginner and a returnee. But the weaknesses is quite usual as well. Other decks that have too much firepower against you. So yeah, Finsmith decks and the meta decks right now, Risk A, Snake Eyes, all of those decks can be very alarming to deal against using this deck. Sometimes your deck doesn't do too much on it. It seems like your Chisho, your Barone is not enough to stop those decks from snowballing out of control. That's why I think Sword Soul is a little bit outdated in a sense that other decks just have too much gas and firepower to outmaneuver you on certain games. But yeah, don't fret because this Sword Soul is very much proved on a very long time now since 2021. So I think you could do a decent job to combat against those decks. But yeah, also the stern difficulty in progression can be challenging. So like I've said earlier, the challenges that you're going to face on learning this deck and learning the game using this deck can be quite a challenge. So it can be very substantial on whether you are going to succeed or fail on this deck. It really depends on your work ethic and yeah, the time that you're going to put and effort that you're going to put into this game using this deck. That's why it's kinda difficult to say that you're going to progress extremely well using this deck. So yeah, moving on. We have the top 2 on our list. We have Tenpai Dragon. So yeah, a very powerful deck on the format right now. Probably one of the most popular decks in the OCG region. And you're going to see the reasons why on our attributes here. So Tenpai Dragon sample deck list. So you can see how nudging this deck is tons of hand traps, tons of board breakers, and you can already tell that this deck means business. It aims to win every game on this meta game right now, and there's a good reason for that. And yeah, you can already tell that the consistency is unmatched. You're going to play a bunch of hand traps and bunch of board breakers with one card combos that are going to start your plays every time. Just you just need one card to OTK the opponent, and it's definitely game once you navigate the interruptions on your opponent and your opponent are left with no interruptions to stop you. You're just going to deal massive damages, 30 60k massive tons of damage to destroy your opponent, and it's not hyperbole, and it's the main gist of this deck. It's to go second and OTK for massive damage, and also very budget for its value. So this is one of the most played deck in the Philippines. We are a third world country and the economy is bad as it gets. So this deck is very much played because it is very budget. You're going to play this deck and build this deck for a very budget amount of value. You only need something like 5,000 pesos to build this deck, and you're going to get results for that. And it's one of the best decks currently in the OCG format, probably a top 5 deck in my own books. So I think you're going to get so much value from investing on this deck. And also one of the best decks available that you can play. So like I've said earlier, this is one of the best meta decks out there in the current format post DP29 in the OCG. And it's not going to get too far from that, because Tenpai have been recently announced and progress in the OCG, and other products like the Info AE are still going to come in the Asian English format in the OCG regions. So this deck will still continue to diversify into the metagame, and this deck is very strong for its availability right now. Considering that it is very budget, you're going to just throw a bunch of staples into the deck, and things like Ash, Maxi, Veiler, Imperm, Droll, and Nibiru, and Shifter. All of those cards are very essential on your card pool as you progress in the OCG metagame. At the end of the day, you're still going to buy those hand traps, because those hand traps are very essential in our OCG. So yeah, it is one of the best decks that you can play in the format, considering that you're going to buy those staples and you're just going to buy the core, and you're pretty much good to go. You have the best available deck that you can play as a budget player and a returnee on this game. But yeah, it comes with weaknesses as well. So going second approach might be a challenge. So it is quite different now from our usual approach into the modern game, where people are opting to go first almost 90% of the time. So only Tenpai are comfortably on going second right now. Other decks like Numeron, Cyber Dragon are decks that can also do that, but it's not meta relevant, unlike Tenpai Dragon right now. So sometimes it can be a challenge for a beginner and a newbie player to navigate going second things, because it's different from going first. It's very different. It's a whole different game from just going first and setting up your board and yeah, just sitting on your resources. It's very different. You're going to break boards, you're going to identify the choke points of your opponent, you're going to hand trap perfectly, you're going to be efficient on your trades and your resource pool on this deck. So it can be very challenging for a beginner to navigate and digest all of those things all in all. So yeah, but the major reason why it is only number 2, spoiler alert, this Tenpai Dragon is better than the number 1 on our list, but for this reason alone, the ban list can nerf the deck. So even though the deck is new, Konami is Konami, it can definitely get worse from that, and the deck is very alarming to a certain point that it's very high performing on major tournaments like the YCSJ. This deck can be a finalist of the tournament, and the WCQ tournaments are top with numerous Tenpais as well. So the ban list can definitely nerf the deck this coming July. So you have limited time to play the deck in full power, and cross fingers and prayers up that this deck can outlast and manage a ban list or two this coming July. So yeah, that's the major concern right now for Tenpai Dragon, that the ban list can definitely change a lot of things on our top 5 list here with this Tenpai Dragon. So yeah, it can definitely hurt the deck moving forward. So yeah, moving on our first on our list. So we have Voiceless Voice on our top 1 on our top 5 beginner decks in early 2024. So moving on, we have the Voiceless Voice. So looking on our Voiceless Voice deck, the strengths of this deck is one of the most underrated things that you could ever find on the Yu-Gi-Oh card game. This is a very resilient deck. It's one of the decks that, similar to Sword Soul, it is bound to outlast the Wits of Time. It can be a very grueling deck to play, but it definitely can survive in a metagame that can be very what do you call this, changey or kinda drastic with so much changes. So I think this deck is a good way to invest at the game because you're going to get a deck that is very high functioning, very powerful, can also outlast the metagame changes. So you're going to get so much value from investing on the voiceless voice right now. And also, this deck is simple yet effective. So you're going to just procure with your one card combo plays, two card combo plays with the Law Saphira, with your Diviner. So you're going to have so much ease on playing the basic combos of this deck. You're going to set up your Sauravis, your Skull Guardian with Omni Negate, and you're going to have a protected board with protection from your barrier, and also a resiliency and recursion from your blessing, and you also have disruptions from your authority or the radiance. So the deck is in complete package. You're going to have so much intangibles and utilities in one deck. That's why it is quite efficient in a sense that it is very simple, but it can definitely give you so much rewarding process on this deck, and also can outlast the drastic metagame. So like I've said earlier, this deck is bound to outlast the Rifts of Time like Sword Soul from 2021. This deck is able to merge as one of the decks that can stay on the metagame for a very long time as well. Considering that this deck won't be heavily nerfed from the ban list, it could only get one nerf from the ban list with going to semi-limited from the barrier, and it's nothing more than that, I think. And I think it's one of the huge assets of this deck right now. You're going to have a very good deck for a very long time, and it can get so much rewards from that, considering that you're going to join tournaments, you're going to win tournaments, and you're going to win games, and you can definitely bring back the value that you have invested on this deck. And probably the most notable weakness of this deck is it can be prone on many hand traps. So most of the hand traps in the game can definitely hurt you. Ash Blossom can hurt your Saphira, the Imperm and Veiler can hurt your Law and Diviner, the Ghost Ogre can hurt your Barrier, and all of those hand traps, even Bell and Magnamut, all of those hand traps are that are existent on the game right now can hurt your strategy. That's why you're going to play around carefully against hand traps. You're going to guess your hand traps that you're going to face on your opponent, and I think it can be challenging considering that you're a beginner or a returnee. And also, this deck can come quite expensive. That's the only struggle on this deck. Diviners are quite hefty. You're going to invest too much on Diviner, and also on the Asian English format, you're going to invest too much on Voiceless Voice as well. And other stuff on the deck can be expensive as well. So you're going to put a little bit more amount of money from the earlier decks that we have schemed on our top 5 list. So yeah, that's the only, probably the most challenging task on building this deck. So yeah, this sums up our top 5 beginner decks in early 2024. So once again, thank you for watching this video. I hope you do learn something from it, and please do like, subscribe, and follow my YouTube channel. It definitely motivates me a lot to keep going. So once again, thank you for watching. See you on the next one. Peace.